Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I've found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at shanajamescoaching.com/3ways. That's shanajamescoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm Shana James, your host, and I'm excited to be here today to talk about improving wealth and your financial confidence. And my guest today is Stephen Gardner. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so happy to have you here. Stephen is the best-selling author of Taming Wall Street and 5 other books, and he's really on a mission to help strengthen America one family at a time by educating them on safe ways to grow and control their money. And the strategies he teaches in his books fly in the face of traditional investing, and he's a big believer in controlling your own money, legally avoiding future taxes, and that are contractually protected against, making sure that you're contractually protected against losing money. So, Stephen, thank you for being on the show.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this work in the world. I mean, it's funny, I often talk about how when we're young, we aren't given much emotional education. And so we end up in these issues and stuck points in relationships because we haven't had a lot of support with this. And money is another one of those. It's one of the most important things we deal with in our lives, right? We can't live without it. And yet we don't get a lot of education about it. So I appreciate you for doing this work in the world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I went to business school, from elementary to business school, I have very few memories of any kind of financial education.
Yeah.
And yet the number one cause of divorce is related to either financial issues or sexual issues.
Wow. Yep.
So if I can help strengthen families and give men and families that confidence, that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah. It's funny, actually thinking back to 5th grade, we had something called mini economy. And I remember I made bracelets and all kinds of things. And we had, I think I actually was the one who designed our money, and we called it Yenoms instead of money. So it was money backwards. So I think back to that time and how much I loved that, being given some playfulness and some education around money. But that's basically where it ended. So, I know your book talks a lot about being in control of money or taking back control of your money. And I'm curious, would you say that most people don't have control of their money? And give us some examples so that a man listening can know, am I in control or am I actually not in control?
Yeah, great question. I think, you see old Western movies where they used to tie the horse to a pole, and it's like, okay, this horse is obviously strong enough to break that and run away. But it was the looseness of the bridle that gave them the perception that they had freedom, but they were actually tied to something.
Huh.
And the same thing goes today. We think we have control of our money, but we don't. The number one place that men save money today is inside of a 401k or an IRA.
Mm-hmm.
And that money is locked up until you're 59 and a half.
Right.
And so how could you be in control of your own money if you have the government telling you, yeah, as soon as you touch your own money,
Yeah.
you'll be heavily taxed and heavily penalized. So,
Uh-huh.
there's this perception of control there. Inside of these programs, you have very few funds to choose from, and they're typically chosen beforehand for you by the
Yeah.
HR department or whoever helps set up the program. And then, of course, the majority of Americans believe that they can put money at the bank or on Wall Street. The problem is banks have little to no growth, but they're safe, where
Hmm.
Wall Street could get the growth, but carries very little safety.
Yes.
So it's a catch 22. And so what I'm trying to show people is there are ways to get the better growth and the more consistent growth on your money, but be contractually protected against losing your money. And then the book goes into detail about some really incredible strategies on how to recover the money that you waste on major purchases like cars and real estate and vacations and things like that. But
Mm.
that there is this unfortunately this perception that it's our money, we can do what we want with it. But until you try to access it, you don't really know that you don't have control of your own money.
Right. Which, I mean, that could be a rude awakening.
Yeah, absolutely. Another example is, I was talking to someone just the other day and I said, I've got quite a bit of equity in my house because the real estate market has gone up since
Mm.
since we moved in, but I can't touch a dime of it.
Right.
And so I have it, but I don't have it. I have no
Yeah.
control over. I can't use it, and so it's this false sense of you have more control than you really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that example too, it's like, okay, there's some comfort in that you have it or you have it for your future, but a lot of people do end up house poor, right? Where they're pouring money into their house and then they've got the equity, but then they can't use it. And so it just becomes such a bind.
Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So then if we're looking at financial confidence and looking at strategies to help a man or, women listen to this too. So anybody really improve their financial confidence. One of the things that actually stood out to me were you talk about the 9 areas of human interference that keep us from, being wealthy and being financially confident. So maybe we go from that angle first. And then if there's anything else you want to add too about, direct line to financial confidence, we can talk about that.
Absolutely, yeah. Those there's a group called the Dalbar group, and they are a third party independent surveyor of Wall Street. So they're
Mm.
not paid by Wall Street, unlike the media, and we'll talk a little bit about this. Who the Wall Street pays for their commercials, so they're not allowed to talk about things that are
Wow.
so. But they go through and they do in-depth studies on what Wall Street says is the average return compared to what it really is.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the main takeaway from these, and then we'll get detailed on maybe a few of these just because of time constraint. But
Yeah.
the main one is most of us are chasing day-old bread,
Hmm.
and so we're trying to make decisions for 5 years from now, 10, 20, 15, 30 years from now, based on data from the past. But most of that data is twisted and manipulated for marketing purposes. And so,
Interesting.
yeah, we're chasing day old bread where by the time you actually catch it, it's moldy or it's dried out, it's no good. And so we're relying a little bit too much on Wall Street as our educator and definitely on old, outdated, or manipulated data.
So are you saying that when people are attempting to invest, they're not getting the real information that they need? And so then what happens then?
Yeah, a very simple example is you could go to Jim Cramer's investment news site where I'm a writer, or you can go to Yahoo Finance or Barron's or Wall Street Journal. Anytime they talk about these averages, you're going to see the number 8%, 8%, 8%, 8%. And so people take $100,000 and they compound 8% out for 20 years and they go, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a multimillionaire.
Hmm.
And that's it's false data.
Huh.
Uh, Dalbar has revealed that it's actually closer to about 3.5%.
Oh, interesting.
And some of that is because people are chasing day old bread. They're saying, oh, wait a minute, let me jump into Netflix because it's killing it right now. by the time you know it's killing it,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
already at the top of the market.
Yeah.
Same thing with Facebook and Apple and different things like that. And so the other thing that Wall Street doesn't tell you is this mythical 8% that doesn't include taxation. It
Mhm.
doesn't take into account market loss. It doesn't take into account average return versus actual return, and
Mhm.
it certainly does not take into account management fees. And they
Wow.
have these hidden management fees where Wall Street actually can end up making more money on your money than you do,
Oh my
but
God.
we're blind to it, absolutely blind to it. So the book goes through and shows you the real math behind Wall Street. But yeah, so we're chasing day old bread. That's the best way that they found to sum it up. But these other 9 that I go through, most Americans tend to fall into one or the majority of them, and so we're just not as wealthy as we could be and as we should be. Again, we're chasing day old bread.
Yeah. Okay, good. And again, this book is Taming Wall Street. So definitely check it out. It's got some really powerful information. And the first one of those 9 areas that you talk about is hurting. So can you give us a sense of how are we hurting and how is that, keeping us from being as wealthy as we could be?
Okay, so there's a few areas where herding comes in to focus. Number one, anytime somebody gets a new job, you're automatically railroaded right into a 401k.
Mm-hmm.
And most people think, oh, okay, well, this is what everybody's doing around me. You ask your new coworkers, and next thing, boom, you're on a plan that's locking your money up for decades,
Uh-huh.
and you have very little control there. So you're going with the crowd
Yep.
there. The other thing is we start taking advice from these gurus on TV that are nothing more than entertainers selling advertising space. And so if they tell us you need to buy Apple or whatever, the herd, the crowds flock to what these people recommend.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily make them wealthier because now it's opportunity cost, right? So okay, I jumped out of this thing to go over to this other thing, but everybody else went over to this other thing, and so the market went up. It's almost like a pyramid scheme, right? Whoever
Uh-huh.
gets in first gets the advantage of everybody below them, and then they sell and move on, and everybody else goes, oh, okay, well, that didn't run up as well as
Right.
I thought.
So that
The
sounds like a combination of number 1 and then number 3 of the 9 areas of media control, right? The media control in addition to the herding and both of those combined.
Yeah. The last thing I would say on herding is we tend to do what people around us are doing.
Yeah.
And so birds of a feather flock together, and so you maybe at church or you're having a barbecue with the neighborhood. What are you doing with your money? Oh, I'm doing this. What are you doing with your money? Oh, we're doing that. And so then whether that's good advice or poor advice, you go, okay, well, if they're doing it, I'll give it a
Well,
try.
right, especially coming from a lack of education around this, we're like, oh, if that person's doing it and we respect or trust that person, I would think, it's easy instead of really considering, okay, where did you get your information and how did you learn this and how's it been going? We don't get that deep into these financial conversations.
Yeah, we don't. And where there is such a lack of financial education, most people know just enough to be dangerous,
Uh-huh.
not enough to be good.
Interesting.
And so, you know, we've just relied. I said this to you before we got on this interview, is we invest money and we pay somebody to do it for us, but we consider ourselves an investor.
Mm-hmm.
But if you apply that to something else, you wouldn't say you're a swimmer because you pay somebody to swim for you,
Right.
right? You wouldn't say that you're a skier because you pay somebody to ski for you because you don't want to hurt your knees or you don't know enough about skiing, but you claim you're a skier. It's the same thing with investing.
Oh.
You have 100 million Americans thinking that they're investors, but really they've just handed over control to a
Mm-hmm.
few people who they believe are smarter than them.
Uh-huh.
And these people may be a little bit smarter, but they're also more distracted. And this is another thing that most people don't realize is that most financial planners, they spend up to 90% of their week looking for new money because they can make fees off of that money.
Hmm.
And
Versus
so
actually taking care of
versus
the money
actually
that they
growing
have.
the money,
Yeah.
right? I go to
Yeah.
these conferences and they spend so much time talking about AUM, assets under management,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, okay, but what about growing the client's money? Where's that portion of the
Mm-hmm.
seminar? Oh
Mm.
no, you just read the pamphlets. So it's unfortunate that is the way that it has gone, but
Yeah.
it's all about how much can I collect in fees, and then they have these contests. Who brought in the most money this month? It's never who increased their client's portfolio the most.
Interesting. Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so the focus, the carrot dangling in front of the professional, is about collecting money, not growing and protecting money.
Yeah.
And so we got to switch that carrot to be about the client's best interest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. I mean, it's great to have this information, and it's, distressing to realize that we don't have this information.
Yeah, it's always hard to have the curtain pulled back and
Yeah.
go, wait a minute, there's no Wizard of Oz. It's just a silver-haired man behind a curtain.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's what is happening with a lot of financial people,
Yeah.
and many of them shouldn't be mentoring anybody because they don't have any money.
Yeah.
I took my son to a Cub Scout camp a couple weeks ago. I was talking to a guy, and I said, a year ago you were in finance like me, and how's that going? And he said, oh, I had to go get a job. I couldn't make enough money. And I said, oh, okay.
Mm.
Um, and then he starts telling me, he said, I just had no confidence to talk about money with people because I had
Wow.
none of my own.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just shocked. I'm in life insurance. I'm shocked how many advisors don't have life insurance.
Yeah.
Retirement planning. I'm shocked how many have filed bankruptcy
Yeah.
or are flat broke themselves. And so you just have to be careful. And it's the same thing. It's the siren's call to the rocks from Wall Street.
Mhm.
Come make easy money. Come make easy money. And the barrier to entry is so low that anybody with $100 or $1,000 can get into that.
Yeah.
And yet, the very wealthy control over 50% of the stock market. And so if the 1% make one small move, it leaves the other 99% going, what happened? I just had the rug
Wow.
pulled out from under me.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about optimism, which is another one of these 9 areas of human interference. And um, yeah, how would you say that optimism gets in the way? I mean, it seems again like this goes back to not really having the information or the inside know-how in the example you just gave, right? So we can be optimistic and yet then other things are actually happening. Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely. So optimism is absolutely an important thing. You shouldn't go into any financial strategy or program unless you're optimistic about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem, especially on Wall Street, is that people have been smoking hopium, right?
Opium.
They,
That's a
they,
good way to put it.
yeah, they hope that their portfolio will go up,
Yeah.
but they don't have a clue how to make it do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get these people that become overly optimistic, like, well, yeah, we're just going to ride the market up, or the average has been this, or past performance tells me that I can expect this. And the truth is, you have no idea what's going to happen on a daily basis. Donald Trump could say something that drops the market tomorrow. North Korea could launch a rocket and change the whole stock market in 24
Right.
hours. I mean, these things have happened. I look at, and I talk about this in one of my other books, but back in 2007, in late September, uh, most Americans thought we've hitched our wagon to a rocket. This thing will
Mm-hmm.
only go up.
Yep.
And then the next day, the stock market fell by 777 points in a single day. And
Wow.
it started this domino effect of the market dropping by 52%.
Wow.
So they went to bed thinking they were rich,
Yep.
and they woke up going, oh my
Oh,
gosh,
yeah.
what's happening to my money? I mean,
Yep.
imagine losing half of your wealth. Unemployment went to double digits. I mean,
Yeah.
this stuff can happen. And yet right now we're in the same position. Most people think, we're on a tear. This thing's going up. The bulls are raging. The bears have gone into hibernation. The stock market is killing it. We haven't had a major market drop in 12 years.
Yeah, it's
And yet the
scary.
average market drop is about every 5 years. And
Wow.
we've had over 300% growth. So that's why I'm not opposed to the stock market. And that's
Yeah.
why I named my book Taming Wall Street.
Yep.
I love Wall Street. I believe in the American dream. I believe in small businesses. That's the engine that drives America, but they don't go up forever.
Yeah.
And we've become overly optimistic, but we don't know why. It's because we're smoking hopium. Everything's built on hope.
Yeah.
But you know, the reality is things can change very quickly and go negative very, very quickly.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's an important one to really see, especially it's, it brings it home with you saying, wow, in general, the market drops, every 5 years or goes through an adjustment, right? And we haven't had one of those and it's been 12 years. So, right, that false sense of security that we sometimes have.
Yep, absolutely. It's I talk to hundreds of families every year, and I'm just shocked at how many don't know they're being ripped off in fees. They're losing. It's just it's incredibly sad. But that's why I'm trying to get the word out. Let people know that there's another way to grow your money. It's not as sexy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to give people that confidence because they're going to know, okay, wait a minute, I can actually grow and take advantage of compound interest, and I don't have to lose any sleep over whether I'm going to lose my money or not.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So maybe we do one more of these. Can you talk a little bit about anchoring and how that is one of these areas of human interference?
Yeah, so anchoring kind of goes back to, and I know that from listening to your podcast, you talk about this a lot, right? There's our adult self and our child self.
Mm-hmm.
And, they say you learn more than 50% of everything by kindergarten. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Yeah.
if our mothers and fathers who don't have any financial education become our main mentor or example of money, then
Mm-hmm.
we're actually getting sicker every generation. And you're only as tall as the shoulders that you stand on.
Yeah.
And so if you want your kids to be wealthy and successful, you need to have a plan where you actually can show them an example where they say, I want to be wealthy like grandpa or like mom and dad. And not, well, my parents gave me this advice, but it's outdated advice and they didn't get a lot growing up themselves.
Yeah.
And so, right now, the average American is retiring with less than $50,000 in savings.
Wow.
And so we have an entire generation that came home after World War II. The baby boomers, there's 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day.
Wow.
And their plan is to live off $50,000.
What is their plan? That doesn't sound like a plan.
Or Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they're doing is they're retiring into poverty.
Yeah.
But they don't know any different. And because this goes back to old things, this is anchoring. Before the world wars, there was no such thing as retirement. We invented the idea of retirement so that people would leave the workforce and make room for the men coming home from war. And so that women could go back into the home and raise families. And they were terrified, like, we got to get these men back to work, right? And so when Social Security was invented, there were 50 workers contributing for every one person that retired. Now it's 2 to 1. There's 2 people working for every one person trying to pull money off of a broken system that has already publicly declared that they will run out of money.
Because do you know that hit the stats of when we're supposed to run out of money?
I believe it's around 2040. They'll only be able to give 75 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
Of what you could predict that you might need. And so, unfortunately, going back to this anchoring, most men died around age 65 to 67.
Mm-hmm.
And so retirement age, this made up number of 65, they would retire get the gold watch, and die within a few years.
Right.
And now people are saying, I want to retire at 55, 60, 65.
And live till I'm 85.
And now people are living to 85 and 90. And so it's like, okay, wait a minute. You did a 30-year career,
mm-hmm.
and now you're hoping to live without income for 30 more years.
Right.
It's only possible if you have a good plan, and most people just don't have a good plan. And so unfortunately they're retiring into poverty. Yeah. And it's very sad. But so that would be an example of anchoring, is we've attached to these ideas, but they're old ideas, or they're false ideas, or they're based on old information. Mm-hmm. The average retirement age, even since I've been doing this for over a decade now, it used to be 62. It's now closer to 72. And yet people are still wanting to retire. And I talk to people all the time, and they say, I want to be rich like Warren Buffett, and I want to retire at age 50. And I'm like, okay, you realize Warren Buffett's almost 90. He goes to work every day.
Yeah.
He's in the top 5 richest people in the world. He's still going to work.
He's still working.
So you're trying to retire based off of a false idea, off of the rich, one of the richest men in the world, who still goes to work, right. Even though he's rich. And so anyway, we've attached to these ideas that are not healthy, and they're really not helping us grow towards being confidently wealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, this is really, really important information. It's giving me a kick in the pants, and I'm sure it's giving our listeners a kick in the pants too. So, I guess one more question I have is, what are some of the most common fears you see among men when it comes to money? Because I imagine the fears will also, similarly in relationships, it's like, oh, I'm afraid of saying what I want, or I'm afraid of receiving, or I'm afraid of speaking my truth, or whatever those things are that then keep us from having the intimacy, the love, the connection, or the leadership at work. So what are some of the fears that are holding men back around money?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just want to say one thing, and then I'll go into this. But when I was in my early 20s, I came to the CEO of the company that I was working for at the time, and I pointed out a major problem within the company that was costing them, significant amounts of money.
Yeah.
And I thought I would be this hero. And the CEO, I remember he said, thank you for sharing this. And then he shared some wisdom with me that has stuck with me all these years. He said, be careful bringing me a problem without also bringing me a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And oh man, that really stung. But so anyway, we're going through some of these problems, and I don't purport that my book is the end all be all of solutions, but it does offer several good solutions.
Yeah, I would agree. It does offer. It's so a great start.
I just want your listeners to know I'm not just bringing all the problems and no solutions. But okay, so what are some of the common fears of men when it comes to money? I honestly believe that financial confidence comes from our ability to produce income. More than even growing our investment money, right? If you lose your income, who cares if your investment portfolio went up by 5 to 10%, right?
Right.
You need that regular money coming in. So that right there, I would say, is probably the number one area that people could get, men could get confidence is just consistently producing good income. But then we have to become good savers. You cannot save your way to wealth, but you've got to be a good saver so that saved money can then go to work for you.
That's interesting, right? You can't save your way to wealth, and yet if you're not saving, you can't become wealthy.
Exactly, yeah. And I say this a lot to people, and I have a few articles that have done well about this. But what we save matters most for most of our life, and what I mean by that is, if somebody makes $100,000, just for round numbers, and they're able to save 10%, they just put $10,000 away. Well, it's going to take a long time for your $10,000 to earn $10,000 in interest. 20, 30 years maybe. And so by becoming a very good saver, you take control of that money
Mm-hmm.
and you put it to work. But then we do have to put it to work, and we have to protect it and get that compound interest growing in our favor. But number one, become a good saver. And I find that if people can't have a vision for how their money could
Yep.
grow,
Yep.
they don't save.
They don't save.
And
Yeah.
that's the problem we're having with millennials, is they don't have a vision for what their money could grow to in the future. And so they take on this YOLO ideation of you only live once. And so then they're spending. So becoming a good saver is good. And that's where that financial confidence comes from, your ability to produce income.
Yeah.
Another fear that I run into a lot with the hundreds of families I work with each year is, am I making the right decision with my money?
Mm-hmm.
So some people do become good savers, or they inherit money. And then there's this fear of, I'm going to make a bad decision. And so then they become too timid.
Right. I was going to say, I could see that leading to paralysis or not taking
analysis
action.
paralysis. And then they stick their money at the bank earning 0.1%.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go, you see, there's no point in saving. It doesn't do anything. And so then
Right.
they go spend, or they do what the majority of people do, is they leave the realm of safety and go into Wall Street and enter the realm of risk.
Right. And in your book, I love that you have another option.
Yeah, I wanted to provide that solution, and again, I don't claim that I have all the answers, but I do have some very good solutions that clients have really found confidence through. Let's go a little bit older. The number one fear among men 50 and older is, will I run out of money before I die?
Mm-hmm.
That is a huge concern among people that are 50 and older.
And how do you work with that fear when someone brings you that fear? Is it really all about having a plan, or what's the solution there?
Yeah, it's understanding, okay, how much time do we have between now and when you realistically can stop working? Not when you want to stop working, but when you can stop working.
Mm-hmm.
And what can we do now to maximize the growth and protection of your money between now and the next 20 years, or the next 15, or the next 10?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to become a more aggressive saver. Maybe you've been too gun shy with your investments, so we need to take on a bigger opportunity for your money. But then the biggest thing is, how do you start to systematically take that money back out to live on it? I'm working with a physician right now, very wealthy. He introduced me to his mother, which, is like the ultimate compliment. And the mother is 80. She won't spend any money because she's terrified of running out of money. And I was able to show her how she could systematically take out around 5% or maybe a little bit more, and she'll never run out of money.
Wow.
But she'd never seen that before.
Never seen that. Wow.
Yeah. And so she went into this, like, I was born around the Great Depression, and I've got to hold on to everything. And so she didn't have any kind of tools or vision for how to start systematically taking that money back out to enjoy and to use, and then whatever's left over, leave to the children, where right now it's like, oh, I've got to hoard everything.
Yes.
What if something happens and I need all of that? And so just showing them how to systematically take that out. The other thing that I see a lot is people are walking around with ghosts from the past. They've made bad money decisions in the past, or they've been burned, or they've had their eyes open that they've been taken advantage of. I'm working with another brilliant physician this week, and he told me about some of these ghosts that haunt him. And over again, he just kept saying, I don't know who to trust. The woman I have my money with right now, she's nice, but I don't trust her. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. Imagine having hundreds of thousands of dollars with someone, and secretly you don't trust them at all.
Oh, that sounds bad.
I see that a lot. And so, you want to have confidence in who's handling your money, and even more confidence in the company that's actually managing that money. But if you don't trust the person helping you get to those goals, that is such a huge hit to your confidence.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for all of this information. And for you listening, I definitely recommend picking up Taming Wall Street and checking out Stephen's website, how can they find your website?
The website is yourbridgeplan.com.
Okay, great. And I know you also have a couple books that you have that you wanted to give away. And so how can people get a copy of the book rather than buying it? How can they connect with you and get a copy?
Yeah, I've got a few to give away from the publisher, and people can check out my website, yourbridgeplan.com, and reach out to me. But the book is always available on Amazon. But yeah, I'd be happy to give a few books away to whoever contacts me first from your listeners.
Awesome. So they can just let you know that they came from here.
Yes, definitely mention that you're from the Man Alive podcast.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Is there any last thing that you want to leave men with that's not, what did you say? Smoking hope. What was it called?
Hopium.
Hopium. Not smoking hopium, but also, giving some sense of, let's not call it hope, but, belief in what's possible.
Yeah, no, I would just say that most people are significantly more capable than they give themselves credit for, especially in the world of money.
Yeah.
We've outsourced that education and that confidence to somebody else. And with the right education and the right plan, I just see that confidence in men and women. It just ignites this fire in them, and they go, okay, I know what to do. And so I want to give people the education and the confidence so that they're like, okay, I'm not living in la la land. I'm fixed and anchored in reality, and I'm moving forward with a plan that I have confidence in.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.